Okay, that's a little bit awkward because it's my laptop that's doing all this streaming. But so I have a probably going to be short presentation, but I was kind of hoping it wouldn't be so much a presentation as the beginning of a discussion. Um, so my name is Alan Akash, if you don't know me already, and I work in one of the HPC centers of excellence. So there's something like 10 of us at the moment at a European level, and we're in different application areas. My home is ECAM, so it's a kind of materials space, and there's actually a couple in the materials space. And I want to talk a little bit about EuroHPC, and maybe because of my role at the moment, I maybe have some information that you don't have, and maybe there's some people in the room who actually have more information than I do. But I'll try and share some things I've learned in the recent past, right, in the last couple of months. So the first question I wanted to kind of ask is, why even bother, right? Why do we need a home, right? Why would we want a project, funding, deadlines, deliverables, these kind of horrible things, right? Why would we want something like that? And I think the first thing to do is like give everybody a pat on the back. We've actually put a lot of effort, and a lot of people in the room have put a lot of effort in making EasyBuild a good product, right? A good tool. It's capable, and there's a lot of users out there, and it's really good. But of course, it comes with like when it's successful, with that success comes like support type activities, right? So more people start to use it, and they want it tweaked, or they don't know how to do something very well, or they want this software, or they want. Right? So people want things. And then the other thing is that people have put a lot of work in, and there's a lot of features out there. And even me, I learned things this week, right? I didn't know X and Y was available in EasyBuild, and so even now I still learn new things. And it has all these features, and having features means, well, hopefully as little as possible. But at the end of the day, there's probably maintenance involved, right? Trying to make sure that everything continues to work. And for people who are coming to the tool, and even for people who already know the tool really well, there's potentially training or just informational stuff, right? Letting people know that these kind of things exist, being able to have a discussion about it. And then the next thing, right, to remain relevant, especially to newcomers, it has to be kept up to date, right? This is the whole process of releasing new tool change, right, every 6 months. There's significant effort involved in that, right? But to be relevant to newcomers, it has to be up to date. And then on the development side, I don't know how much low-hanging fruit there is left, right? I think we've done a lot of that kind of stuff, and the kind of things that people are asking for now, they're not that easy to do anymore, right? They actually require significant development work, and so that kind of work is that kind of time to do that kind of work is hard to come by. And then one of the things that I think is quite important is that we really don't do the kind of performance testing and tweaking that we should do, especially for like the marquee applications, for the big ones, And I come at that from my center of excellence hat, right? Like there are these centers of excellence that are funded at a European level, right? And they all have software involved that are supposed to be, heavily supported by the EU. And so from their perspective, from the EU perspective, putting money into these applications, and we deliver them, right? It's not like the software is supported in EasyBuild, but we don't have a way of testing and tweaking, like the tweaking involved in making sure they perform really well on all the different architectures. It does happen in cases, and there's definitely people who make an effort in this way, but it's not done consistently, right? So people have an interest in making something work really, really well, but for the other ones, they don't have that interest. So if somebody else is not doing it, it doesn't happen. And of course, if you look at the potential of EasyBuild, like it has that potential to help an awful lot of people, right? An awful lot of European researchers and the HPC sites. But if we don't have the money and the time to have an outreach and a support program for them, we rely a little bit too much on word of mouth. And the word of mouth is good, right? So if people talk about it to other people, it's usually to tell them it's doing something useful for me. So I mean, that's the most valuable one, probably, is the word of mouth, in terms of people trust these people more. But you still also need that outreach program, because there are people who are not going to get these words, right? You're not going to get into everybody's ear because it relies on a network to be there. and maybe some of these people are not inside that network, and it's something you see a little bit in EuroHPC, because EuroHPC is, I mean, I can't remember how many Europe or states are involved, but there's quite a few, right? And there are some of these people, some of these countries who are not players in the HPC scene really, right? So maybe they have a machine or something, but they may not have the way into the network, right? So they may not be able to hear these words, right, coming out of other people's mouths, because they just don't have that network. And that's something that you could address with an outreach program. Yeah, so there are a lot of smaller countries in EuroHPC. And something like EasyBuild also has a way of ensuring consistency between sites. So if you had a scheme where people can move through the European infrastructure, right, from their university to their national infrastructure, to the PRACE infrastructure, to the infrastructure that will come with EuroHPC, if there's somehow some kind of consistency in how software is delivered as they transition through, that saves them a lot of effort, right? The thing about all this kind of stuff is it requires resources. Now, resources is a loose term. Certainly, resources means money, but probably most importantly, it means time. And without paying for people's time, you're not guaranteed it, right? So people put a lot of effort into what we've done so far. People have put a lot of their time into it, but they do it like they find a way to make it happen, right? They either do it in their free time or they do it during the work time with the excuse that it helps them to do their job, right? So they find the time. But if you really want to make these kind of pushes and something like an outreach and support program, unless somebody's paying for it, it's not going to happen, because it doesn't help you with your job, right? Typically. Maybe for some people it somehow is relevant. For a lot of people though, you can't just say I'm going to go to these countries and give tutorials on EasyBuild. That's taking a lot of time from your actual work, right? And your employer might be like, I don't see the benefit of that for me. And so funding is something that can help you bridge this kind of a gap. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Unless these things are part of somebody's roles, sometimes the progress in ways that you might want to go can be too slow, right? So that's probably the issue. So just if you haven't heard of EuroHPC, and maybe some of you haven't, I hope that most of you have. Basically what it's doing is taking all the money that's going into HPC on a European level and putting it into one pot. And so why I say EasyBuild a home in EuroHPC, if EasyBuild doesn't have a home in EuroHPC, it's getting no European money, right? Because it's in the HPC space. So unless you're part of EuroHPC, you're not in the game, right? And so yeah, all the European money is going in there. What do they plan to do in the next 4 to 5 years? They want to have 2 machines in the top 5 of the top 500 and a further 2 in the top 25 within the next 5 years. And those are going to be open to private and public users. Probably mostly public, but they really want to see European industry using these kinds of machines. And that's the kind of activities that they will support a lot. They want to support people and projects to bring industry into these kind of resources. They have supporting actions for that. So, but one of the big things that they really want to do is stimulate technology supply, right? So they actually want to see European technology in these top 2. They want to see European technology. Where they're going to get it? Well, we don't really know that, right? But this is their goal, is to actually stimulate the technology development to generate IP in Europe, right? And in this kind of space. That's a lofty goal, but we'll see what happens. And that's an expensive goal as well, right? So to try and generate hardware is an expensive proposition. I mean, they've done it in other places. They did it in China, but they threw an awful lot of money in it to do that. And in Europe, you don't have that. You don't have access to that kind of money, and then you also don't have the justification to spend it in that kind of a way. So with the money that they do have, of course, the justification is the people who use it, right? It's the users. And that puts a lot of maybe pressure on the scientific space, because they are the users, right? For the most part, they're the user. They definitely want to see industry, but they're a little bit realistic about the level of HPC usage in industry. It's not that high, right? And you're probably not going to see so many SMEs in that space unless you really hold their hand and bring them to it, right? And they will support that kind of stuff, but most of the justification is going to come from the scientific side, and that's probably part of the reason that you see things like the centers of excellence, is because they need that scientific community to drive these machines forward. But a lot of the money will go towards the technology development side of things. So just to mention that there are actually no relevant calls open yet. I checked. Maybe things have changed in the last 2 days, but there's only one call open at the moment, which is the hosting sites for the big machines. So people who actually want to host these big machines, there's an expression of interest for that at the moment. But that's the only thing that's open so far. They're supposed to come soon, right? So we should be seeing these calls already opening in. They said at the start of this year. It hasn't happened yet, but probably you could expect it in the next 2 to 3 months that you will start seeing these calls open up. And that's their website at the moment. I should mention that it's not the first. Well, we haven't said we'd talk about getting funding for, but we've kind of tried, right? So we put in EasyBuild, the group put in a proposal last year as a center of excellence. We called it CodeCo EE. And it was basically software engineering center of excellence, and it was adapted for the exascale environment. The idea being to bring the good practices and pull them into the scientific community more. So a couple of the things we touched on was like the CI for exascale machines, the delivery stuff, of course, so EasyBuild and containers, and then best practices in general in people's workflows. We didn't get the money. You probably would have heard if we did. And there was a couple of criticisms which were interesting to think about and to address. So one of the things that they pushed for a long time was co-design, right? That you work with technology providers and help design the machines themselves. That's always a difficult thing, and of course, as a center of excellence, we have to address these kind of things as well. Sometimes it's hard to know what they mean by that, whether they actually mean talking about designing hardware with people, which is, we're just not a big enough customer to make that really feasible. But they want to, because they're interested in hardware design in Europe. This is a kind of a hot topic with them. So we don't address that. I would take a different viewpoint. I think there's two aspects to this. There's hardware co-design and software co-design. And software co-design is something that we could have probably elaborated on more in the proposal. The next one was, what does it do for European industry? And we didn't really address that, right? And so it's thinking about, like, it's not our space, right? We don't really do that, but the things that we do, how do they help industry? And actually, like, there are industrial people using EasyBuild and things like that, right? And so we just need to understand, like, how do they use it and why do they use it? And then all we need to do is parrot that back, right? There are people, and this is what they do, and we can help that other people, etc. So maybe we didn't do that enough. The effort was not differentiated enough from ongoing activities and other projects. And this is that kind of statement is a bit annoying in a way, because, like, you make a tool that's fully capable, or that's pretty good, right? And then they say it's, you're not doing anything innovative enough, even though you're trying to build on this thing, right? You want to make it even better, right? And then the other project stuff. Now, it's hard to know what they meant by other projects, but if you think about things, you could say like something like OpenHPC, for example, right? So what are you doing that's different from OpenHPC? And maybe it's important to actually touch these things to say, this is how we're different, and find something that's they might have heard of before, and say, we're not this is not the same as this, because they do this kind of thing, but we do something very different, right? Another thing was that we didn't actually have. So we were saying we were going to, like, bring all these best practices, but we didn't have anyone who said they were going to engage with us, right? So we're not bringing a code, we're not bringing an application to the game, and we didn't have anyone who said, like, you're going to do all these great things, and we're going to use them, right? And that's actually a pretty big shortcoming, because they're interested in particular scientific areas, but we were covering the spectrum, right? And probably we were missing that community part, right? Like, who exactly are you going to help? And like, can you guarantee that you're going to help them, or that they're at least going to try and implement what you've done? We didn't have that. The other thing they mentioned is performance analysis and optimization. Like, how does it actually address these things? That also wasn't included. And there are ways that we could have done that too. Lacks ambition in relation to exascale and pre-exascale. So they're very hardware focused, right? And there's going to be this exotic hardware, and how do we address that? I think this is this kind of thing is a narrative thing. You have to make the right story, I think, because when they say this, they're thinking in the application space, right? But you're talking about supporting those applications, right? Delivering the software stack that they need before they can even start to use these machines, right? And this is so I think that one is about the story. Maybe the story wasn't told well enough to make this clear, that like, just so people can use the machines, like we do something that's really valuable to them, because we make it possible for them to use it. Otherwise, it's just like a mess for them. It's too hard to move there, right? Unless they have a simple software where they go like I need a compiler, I type make, and everything just works, right? But that's like a very small portion of the application spectrum out there.
There's a question on the chat. How is EuroHPC different from ETP for HPC?
ETP for HPC is a collection of organizations. EuroHPC is like from the commission, and all the money sits in EuroHPC. ETP for HPC is just like a couple of people who it's an organization where they pay some kind of a fee to be a group, but they're like a lobby organization. They're a lobbying group, right? So they don't hold the purse strings. The money all sits in EuroHPC. It's a European Commission thing, right? And the way EuroHPC works in terms of its funding, it took all the money that was there in the HPC space in Horizon 2020, and now it's collected that, and it will manage that money from now on. And also from now on, it's a joint undertaking, which means that when you go for a project there, it's partially funded by the member states themselves as well. So it doesn't mean that 100% funding doesn't come from the European Union. It's co-funded by the member states as well, which is different to the way it is before, because that's not how Horizon 2020 works and stuff. So some of the things will change in the future in terms of funding. Oh, this is something else that shouldn't be there. So these are actually, the next couple of slides are actually from the Commission themselves, right? So it's from a presentation they gave just before Christmas, which kind of gives you a picture for the timing of things and what kind of things are going to cover in the next couple of years. So there's a couple of different colors here. There's the blue colors, which are things that they say will definitely happen, but take note of the big draft in the corner here. Things change quite frequently. Like, so the amounts of money that you hear about, they tend to change. So until you actually see it published, maybe you just have to accept that things might not be as clear as they seem here, right? But they have the types of calls. So these are the EPI is the European Processor Initiative. So it's hardware stuff. There's two phases to that they definitely want to happen. Extreme scale technology, it's the same. It's a hardware thing. Then they have the applications. This is in yellow, right? So they want it to happen, but there's no guarantees. And then federating the resources as well. A lot of this federation is somehow connected to how praise works. So I mean, I think the applications call, I believe it will happen. The federating one, I think that might change a little bit, because there's a lot of discussion between praise and in EuroHPC about how they will manage these kind of things in the future. So that relationship is still evolving. The one that I think is probably most interesting for us is this type of call, right? This widening HPC use and HPC skills, and I think that's maybe where we'll see what kind of calls come out there in the end, but that this might be the place where EasyBuild could find a good home. There are two things out there. There's of course the SMEs, support to SMEs to try and get small and medium enterprise to use HPC resources. That's a challenge. We'll see how that works. I mean, they want to do things to help these people, but it's difficult. Like with a big company, they can hire somebody who's the HPC guy or the HPC group, right? With an SME, they already have a small staff members and stuff. They don't have a lot of time to spend learning new things, right? So what kind of services you can provide those people? You'd have to see. I think you'd have to see the call to see exactly what the scope is there. The other interesting thing is these competence centers. This is something that's coming in the future, and a competence center is basically an organization in each member state that covers like a certain set of skills for people. So if I'm a business, for example, or I'm an academic user, especially if I'm a business and I want to know about HPC, it's the competence center that I will go to first, right? And they will do the initial training courses, and they will help me get to understand what HPC is, and maybe to help me find my way to European technologies, right? So these are the first contact people, and that's going to be interesting because there's going to be one in each member state. It's not necessarily that they're going to be like, for example, if those member states are already in praise, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same as the praise partner. It might not be, but there's at least going to be one in each of the countries, right? So the whole point is that these are definitely going to happen in the countries. Now, I would expect that on top of having the centers in the countries, they're going to have some kind of call to help support them, right? To make them consistent, right? Because you got to get them to communicate. You got to offer a consistent set of services across the union. So, and I would expect to see calls that are directed towards that, right? So first, what are they going to offer? How are they going to offer it? And make sure that there's a consistency in the quality of that offering right across the European Union, and they communicate with each other. And that could be interesting. Yeah, and this is it, right? This is the competence centers. There's more details about them. So one per member state, on-demand services to people, access to an innovation ecosystem, whatever that might mean, and to the supercomputers, access to experts, training and outreach, and then networking, right, and coordination across the other competence centers. So with this description, there are certainly aspects of that where you could think, oh yeah, EasyBuild together with other things could find a home. The support to SMEs, what's that going to look like? Outreach to try and bring SMEs. Yeah, okay, so this is kind of interesting. So the focus of the action will be in the areas addressed by the centers of excellence, right? So basically it's taking like, well, how do you interpret that, right? Well, how I would interpret that is that there's a lot of drive in the centers of excellence, certainly on particular applications, right? So they're spending money in the centers of excellence to make a certain set of applications exascale ready, or at least ready to run in the European exascale architectures. And then this money is spent, these applications are open source, but they want to get those applications down to businesses, right? To say these things exist, they're free, you can use them, we have the hardware, it's also going to be free to use, however they do that as well. But you know, so to try and get them in and say there are things, there's capable software, there's the infrastructure is there for you, there's the support, there's the training, right? We have all those things. Yeah, and try and bring the companies in that way. I mean, of course, it's all forward thinking, right? That they think that HPC, the space, is something that's going to grow in the future, and there's going to be more and more people doing it. And so it's important to have this thing, this culture, start to make its way into the SME environments as well. Yeah, the timing for this, they say Q1, right? I don't know if that means Q1 or January, right? But it hasn't happened. It didn't happen in January. Today is the 1st of February, so let's say Q1. The other interesting one is maybe the applications. That's the optional call that I would suspect is pretty likely to happen. HPC and big data, they tend to couple these terms these days, right? So in the joint undertaking, they kind of think of them, they're spoken in the same breath. So, and these are large scale application pilots. They're probably looking for application pilots on the new machines. Also, I think the scope here, potentially scope here, depending on how they word that call for EasyBuild as well, and also depends on what we want to do a little bit, right? In what areas we might want to grow. Yeah, industrial pilot test beds. I mean, when I look at these things, I think like you gotta have the software stack for people like in this, right? I mean, trying to get like industries and then tell them to use this machine, and then you tell them that you don't have, like, they're going to expect a certain environment that's actually might be very hard to deliver, right? So even like the things like we did with the Power 9s, right? The stuff that we were able to do, like we have, you know, FOSS is more or less fully supported, right, on the Power 9 architectures, which would have been really difficult for somebody to do if we hadn't put in that effort, right? Because a lot of things just like fail for reasons that, unless you're a bit of a configure make guru, like, you wouldn't really know what that means. It's just a failure, right? And so if you're not familiar with that environment, things just fail. Whereas, so we have the capabilities to make these things kind of happen a little bit. And I think that's my last slide. That's basically it. So I kind of wanted to see the discussion off of the back of that.
Very interesting talk. This is the future. You draw the big picture, but currently we have price. And I don't know if you work in Praise if you are familiar with the Praise project, but currently in Praise we have a lot of person months which are in this project, and you have two work packages, one dedicated to application and another one dedicated to a unified view of the services across the Praise center, but not only tier 0 centers, the big one, but also tier 1. So my personal feeling is there can be something can be done already with existing project within Praise, and maybe we just need to find a way to redirect some of the PMs to.
That's the hard part, right? I mean, because.
But you are in charge of the project.
Well, Ulik is Ulik, not
yeah,
me, right? Yeah, I mean, it's true that Ulik is in charge, is running the show in Praise at the moment, or at least Thomas Lippert is the head of the organization, and we're the PI on the calls. But and that's true. But there are a lot of partners in Praise, right? And there's a lot of players in Praise as well. And so, trying to say you need to spend resources in something that they haven't been doing in the past already. Yeah, I think there would be some convincing there, and I wouldn't be the one to do that, right? So yeah, that would kind of have to come internally, I think, from Praise before you would see something, and it wouldn't happen in the next couple of years, right? Because they have their call at the moment,
Why?
and the current call is not part of EuroHPC, right? So they will have to get their money also from EuroHPC somehow, right? So this whole dynamic between Praise and EuroHPC, we have to see what's going to happen there. But like at some point, they're also going to be part, funded. Their funding is going to come from EuroHPC as well. So there's this kind of like, we're in this period at the moment where we don't really know what's going to happen.
But currently in Praise, especially on the operational work package, you have a subtask which is user services, and the goal of this subtask, what it is written in the description of work, what has been validated by the Commission, is to provide a uniform way for users on all of these centers. So here there are rooms. So for an EasyBuild initiative.
I mean, I totally agree. The thing is that people, I mean, to make the kind of changes like we made in Ulik, right, to start using EasyBuild in the first place, that's a big shift for people, right? So for the centers, right? So if you talk about more people using it and using it consistently across everybody, that might not never happen, right? Because you have people like who've been touched by SPAC as well, right? So there are SPAC users in the Praise space.
You can do in between. You can work internally in the project to work on EasyBuild, to say this is the main solution for everybody, and within the project we put effort on that part. But if you want to do something else, for instance with SPAC or your own tool, at least you are compatible with the Praise common user environment, it's okay. So this way we can fund some effort for that.
So why hasn't it happened yet? Maybe repeat the question.
Kenneth is asking why it hasn't happened yet.
Maybe just because we did not have the good connections.
I'm a bit curious. How many people in the room actually do work related to Praise? You're nearly all from the same place, but yeah. So not so many, right? But there are quite a few EasyBuild users within Praise, right? As in terms of the sites.
There's a benchmark initiative in Praise.
Also, yes.
There is already a benchmark initiative in Praise that they run benchmarks and things, and so I believe that they install also their software using EasyBuild, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure if it's still the case, but Surfsara were leading that, right? So and Surfsara use EasyBuild, right? So it's kind of easy for them to.
Well, they picked up EasyBuild after most of that effort was done. If you look at
that was a long term. The benchmarking thing went on for a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
If you look at the European Praise benchmark suite that they have, They have lots of applications in there that we have in EasyBuild, and they have installation instructions for those applications. And you say, look, there's a make file for CP2K, and yeah, you run make, and if it doesn't work, you change the options. That's like the installation instructions. And if you look at this, you're like, no. I mean, it's not that easy, like not even close. So that would be a good place to make EasyBuild and like properly standardize it, right? Because they made a lot of effort on the runs, and then the installations are like, yeah, I just run make, and it's probably going to work.
I mean, the one thing I might say is that moving into such a large project, it might be hard to be innovative, to be like, to do things the way you might want to do them, or to make, to like do risky things a little bit, right? It might stifle that a little bit to try and please so many people.
Just to provide a services which is homogeneous across the site, already it's an innovation in terms of the price project.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we talked about this. I think like if I look at what people have discussed during the week, there's interesting stuff out there. If you look at what they did in Canada, that they provide a software stack across the entire thing. And at the end of the day, what is EasyBuild? It's about, like, you know, gigabytes of space, right? And a software mount. It's a mount point, right? And, you know, like in terms of the module path, but if a user wants to use it, it has to be in their module path. If they don't, if a site doesn't want to show it directly to users, it's not in their module path. It doesn't exist, right? All it is a bit of disk space and a mount point, and a module path, right? That's it. So I think that's an interesting way to think about it. You can make a service that's available to people. They can hook into it if they want. If not, okay. But there is, the possibility is there, and there's a predecessor. I mean, people are using it in other places, right?
And the technology is mostly.
And the technology is there, right?
And mostly European.
Yeah.
It's relevant for.
And then I look at what the guys did with Reframe as well, and I talk about these marquee applications, right?
Totally,
I mean, to remove the onus on people to know how to install these applications, and how do you know that it's efficient, right? I can get a performance number, right? Some applications are good at telling you these things, right? So Gromex will tell you how many nanoseconds per day. How many nanoseconds per day am I supposed to expect? Right? What's a good number? Like, what, on my hardware, like, how do I know? And maybe like making this easier for people to understand, or purporting it in a way, like if they had a range, right? If you know between this range and that range, that's like pretty good for this hardware. This is valuable information, right? And and well, I know you have it, right? But that's what I mean. It's like this kind of thing, especially for people in the smaller countries in EuroHPC, the guys who are still paying money, right? But they might not. It's very hard for them to actually access the money in EuroHPC, because all the expertise sits in the larger partners, right? So they're the ones that are going to host the big sites. They're the ones with a lot of the expertise, and this is a discussion that's in EuroHPC that the Commission is worried about, is the participation of smaller countries. What are you going to do for them? Like so they're going to they've promised to put money in, but what's the benefit for them in return, right? So how are they going to get something out? And you have to find a way to include them with the realization that maybe they're not as experienced as other people. Maybe they can't bring as much in terms of the knowledge, the pre-existing knowledge. Maybe they can't bring as much to the table. But it doesn't have to be like that. This whole widening thing is that you can think about, but there are services we can create, we can train people, we can provide these things in our countries. They have HPC machines typically, right? So, and just help them do a better job. They don't know all these things about how efficient something is supposed to be, or these are things you can address, right? And you can share.
Just to add something really concrete, I was talking you about this operation work package and this user services subtask. I am in charge of this subtask. And there is this praise common user environment concept, which is currently not in a very good shape. But this is already in the description of work. So if we put this common environment to a higher state, to a very good shape with EasyBuild, nobody will see an issue. The only question is how you can use that to get a real benefit in terms of funding, because the issue here it's to get people to help you to work on that. So for me, in the subtask, to just open this subject and to start something to do a really better job, there is no problem. The big point is how you get into the work package to get the funding.
Yeah.
Whether you at Ulish or you from VSC, I don't know. You are in praise now, yeah.
Well,
But
No, you're not, right? I mean,
oh yes and no, and the guy from Scenario probably knows best. He's not. He's watching his laptop. In Belgium, it's complicated because, like always, right? So officially, Belgium is a partner in Praise, but through the French-speaking part, they are the contact point, which makes it difficult for the Flemish sides to like actually be involved in stuff, right? It's a very weird situation in Belgium.
It's not that difficult to get it. They meet on a very regular basis.
No, it's changing.
There is a joint meeting quite often between all partners in Belgium involved in Praise. I can assure you, Stefan is going to it actually, so he's actually spends a lot of time on Praise. So it's the collaboration is quite good, and actually, even though most science money is not federal, it even looks like for EuroHPC there will be a huge amount of federal money also.
yeah. I mean, this whole discussion is interesting because you could also think about that it could be, if there is some call where things fit, it can be a mutually beneficial thing, right? So Praise is a legal entity, right? So it could be potentially a partner in a project we make a call, and obviously that would help that project, right? Because obviously the Commission is very familiar with Praise. If Praise is on board with something that we're trying to do, and these connection lines are drawn, then that can be useful. And the same, like, you know, there's probably people who are connected to other centers of excellence in the room, right? So if you can get support from centers of excellence as well. And there's also another project called, which I'm also involved in, called Focus COE, which is a connection point, which is a kind of a coordination center of excellence for the centers of excellence themselves, right? So try and connect things between the centers of excellence. So you might be able to connect to that project as well, right? And say through them, you go to everybody else. So, I mean, I think depending on exactly what's in the text in the next couple of months, that the scope for a project is there, and then it's to think about, you know, how interested are you, like, because, you know, projects are effort, right? And so you're going to need like your institute to give you the nod, kind of. But
maybe just last point to add is that the sixth implementation of the Praise project will start in a few months. So this is usually the time that all these tasks are precisely defined and each partner say, I want to work on this and that. So maybe it's a... Yeah, but as I... So you said this is too late because everything is already defined, but
Somewhere in the proposal already. No, it's within the scope of the proposal and within the partner.
yeah.
so.
But as I said,
let me just repeat that, so just for people on the stream. So he's just saying that, like, the proposal has already been approved, the PMs have already been allocated, and that there's not really scope to redistribute it.
but as I said, not completely. It depends a lot. As I said, from a technical point of view, in my subtask, which is already defined, there is room to say afterward, we will work on EasyBuild, no problem. And on the PM distribution, the distribution is currently made for partners, but partners means country. And then within the country, it is not yet defined who. Okay, so it's done in Belgium, but in each PM that are already spread, maybe it's not already assigned to a specific task. So if you, for instance, you have 10 PMs, maybe you can say, okay, no, I will put 4 PMs to work on this EasyBuild part. So just to mention that everything is not settled yet. But to do an efficient things here, because you already do a great job, what's missing it's more people, from my understanding. So dedicated time. So you need to get enough PMs to do quite a nice job. So.
Anyone else who has some thoughts? I guess it's all a bit up in the air right now, especially for.
Yeah, I mean, in
the
terms of the
calls
money, it's decided, right? But then the actual calls, things change, right? And yes, there's a lot of political interest in what these calls look like, right? So they might, what was presented a couple of months ago, could change significantly by the time the calls actually come around. But for sure, this widening perspective and the EU concern about the smaller countries, or the ones who are not so represented in the funding that has gone on in the past, right? So this is an issue that they raise with the centers of excellence, that there's too many established partners in there, and there's not the distribution, right? There's not the, what do they call them? I can't remember. They're like the 16 countries who are, I can't remember, but that there's not enough spread of the money, right? That there's not, you don't see partnerships with the smaller countries who don't have the resources and things like that. So, and this is a big concern for them. So that might be a good doorway, I think. And yeah, I think like in terms of the number of countries in the room, right? There's quite a few. We're well represented, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll certainly keep in touch how the calls go, and we'll try to involve the people who are interested. So if you're interested in maybe helping to look into these calls or being involved in an effort like this, let us know. We can keep you in the loop with what's going on.